we're going to end with pyruvic acid. And there are a series of biochemical reactions to get from here to there. A biochemistry course, so there's really not a need to know every single individual little step. We do need to know, as we go from glucose to pyruvic acid, analysis. Because what you're going to notice as we go through this is this is the illustration that goes with it, the description is what came before it. Because there will be a point in your academic career where you'll illustrate and describe the process. This is the reaction cascades into the next reaction. What did we say our next reaction was? Next reaction is Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle, again here. And eventually we're going to produce carbon dioxide. Of byproducts of this. Which we're going to get 2 molecules of FADH. And we're going to get 2 molecules of ATP. Series of biochemical pathways. We're not going to go nuts about all of the individual steps. Like that, you can take biochemistry and learn about acetyl-CoA and coenzymes and energy-producing factors and energy-consuming factors. We don't have that kind of stuff. But we're going to, in the case of plants, that's CO2, and we're going to make put it that way, FADH and ATP. Is in, for lack of a better word, the NADH and the FADH for ATP. Well, if we look at the example of somebody tipping you in euros, you're going to go down to the bank and change in those euros for American dollars. What do you have to know?
You have to know the value?
You have to know the exchange rate. Maybe there's some guy outside, hey, you got those euros? I'll give you $1 for every euro. It's not a very good plan, because right now the euro, as far as I know, at least last time I looked, is still stronger than the dollar. So each euro is worth $2, they give you 1, kind of stuff. So we gotta know the value in the electron transport system. Generates enough energy to make 2 molecules of ATP.
Did you say 2 molecules?
3 rather, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was about to say
3
something. I'm like,
molecules
wait, you
of
have 3.
ATP. From one day. Getting ahead of myself. Because it turns out that for each FADH, we get 2 molecules of ATP. And what I'm going to do is show you the chemical reaction that gets us there. But you have to understand that it's 2 reactions in one. You may want to write this twice. It's just a slide ran out of room, so I made this a compound reaction. There is nothing in the world called NADH, FADH. It's 2 different reactions. Either NADH plus oxygen is going to yield NAD plus water plus energy. Or in a completely different reaction, if it's FAD that comes in, then FADH plus oxygen will yield FAD, water and energy. To make a bunch of hydrogen ions, which are really just protons. And it turns out when we make a big enough pile of hydrogen protons, we can change the shape of the membrane in the matrix. Those protons zoom through. They actually spin a little enzyme, which looks like a little water wheel called ATP synthase. Spinning that water wheel generates kinetic energy that allows us to bond that phosphate on. Know the intricacies of that is not important, but that's why we call it electron transport. In physics, something called a proton motive force, meaning we're moving protons to generate energy. But there are a couple of things we have to pay attention to here, especially oxygen. Oxygen is fundamentally important in this process. In fact, oxygen is so special in the process that we give it its own little name. Oxygen in this case is called a terminal electron acceptor. Which means we have to kind of unbox all that to figure out what it is.
Did you say terminal?
It's called a terminal electron acceptor. Is to finally accept that electron at the end. We're going to separate the electrons. That electron's got to go somewhere. Water is going to actually accept it at the end. We're going to start piling up NADH and FADH in the cell. If we wind up with excess NADH and FADH in the cell, what's that going to cause to happen?
Get full.
No, not so much get full.
Might explode or something.
No, we're not going to blow anything up. But if we pile up a whole bunch of product, what happens to chemical reactions if we get too much product? It's going to make the reaction stop. So where did these come from? Krebs cycle, right? So if we pile up too much NADH and FADH, that's going to shut down Krebs cycle. It's not going to work. If acid builds up in the cell, pyruvic acid builds up in the cell, what's that going to cause to happen? Glycolysis stops. Well, if we got no glycolysis and no Krebs cycle and no electron transport, it means we got no ATP. What do we call a body that can't make ATP? Call it dead. Because your cells need that ATP to function. So the main reason you're eating today is because your mitochondria need a terminal electron acceptor to keep this process for generating ATP. H are going to come into the electron transport system.
8.
I hear 8, I hear 10. Any other guesses?
3.
3. Okay. Well, 10 happens to be the right number. Who said 10? All right, where did we get 10?
There's the 8 from the Krebs cycle, but then there's still 2 left over from glycolysis.
Exactly. 2 from glycolysis, 8 from Krebs cycle. Now, if you're looking at your glycolysis, let's address this now. Didn't we say we made 4 out of glycolysis? Why do we only have 2? Say again? Sure. Well, not for Krebs, but same thing with glycolysis, right? Remember we had to spend 2 to make 4. Well, if you have to spend 2 to make 4, did you make 4? No, you made 2. Just like if you give a friend 50 cents and they give you $1, did you make $1? No, you made 50 cents. So we get 2 from glycolysis, 8 from Krebs cycle. So we got a total of 10 NADH. How many of those do we have available? We have 10 NADH to go into electron transport. How much ATP am I going to be able to generate from those 10 NADHs?
3.
Gives us 3, so if I got 10 of them, I can get 30. So 10 NADH, each individual is worth 3, I can get 30 ATP from those 10 NADH. Transport, how many ATP can I get out of electron transport? What's the cell and then migrate to there to make that happen? Yes?
So each of these is aerobic respiration?
This whole process is aerobic respiration. Glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport are all the subdivisions of this thing we call aerobic respiration.
And isn't there a part that's not? I'm sorry.
You mean something that's not aerobic?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be fermentation that we'll talk about
Okay.
in a minute.
Yeah.
Because all of this is contingent because of oxygen being the terminal electron acceptor. It's contingent upon an oxygen environment. All right, so we know we get our 34. When this was calculated, and it was ages ago now, I think this was all figured out, I want to say in the mid-60s. Not positive about it. It's a happy, it took them about 2.5 years to calculate all this. Because you're going to look at, how much it takes for the exothermic reactions, the endothermic reactions. A lot of math goes into doing this. But the theoretical chemists finally come up with, published their work, they're all kinds of happy. Well, what happened, and what's the point? Theory's great.